The views and opinions expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of Natural Bridges Media or KSQD's staff, volunteers, or underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Talk of the Bay. I'm your host, Len B.A., and I have two guests with me today, Andy Carman and Bruce Van Allen. As Andy Carman began winding down his private practice as a psychologist, he searched for ways to make a difference addressing the many environmental challenges we face. Impressed by the work of our numerous dedicated local environmental groups, he looked at how to publicize their many educational and volunteer opportunities so that everyone can know how they can participate. 7 years ago, he created Environteers.org, whose mission is to make it easy to keep informed and take action to protect and restore our environment. Today, the Environteers website and weekly update newsletter promote the activities of the 100-plus environmental organizations and institutions in the Santa Cruz area. The update is the environmental newsletter for Santa Cruz County. The update always has beautiful photos, fascinating and informative articles, compelling action items, good news, and it's free. Andy Carman, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Hi, Len. Thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
And also with us is Bruce Van Allen. Bruce is a software developer and political consultant for local progressive campaigns and organizing efforts. Bruce served as mayor of Santa Cruz in the early 1980s and is currently serving as president of the Santa Cruz County Board of Education. He developed the Santa Cruz Community Calendar to promote connection and community in our region, available at santacruzcommunitycalendar.org. Bruce Van Allen, welcome.
Thank you, Len. It's a real pleasure to be here today with both of you.
So, Andy, I wanted to start with you and ask you, why did you start Environteers? What inspired you to create it?
Well, I looked for different ways that I might be participating in environmental work in the county, and looked at research reforestation for a couple of years, and looked at, of course, many different organizations. And then in coming to know about the many, many environmental groups in this county, I thought probably not a need for one more group. But I saw that there was no hub or resource that's promoting all of the groups. There was no website where they were all listed, and this is before I even had the idea of the newsletter, so that wasn't part of the originating of the organization. But so I decided to create this website that would list every single environmental group in the county and identify, their mission statements, have links to their sites, and publicize their educational activities and volunteer opportunities. And that's how I got started. And then I saw it's a little hard sometimes to draw traffic to a website, and I realized a much better way to get the word out was to have an email newsletter and have subscribers and bring it right to people's computers. So it's home delivery.
All right. So you actually have a subscription base as well, then?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's, started off.
No charge, though.
Pardon?
Free?
Oh, yes, free subscription. And, of course,
exceptional these days.
Started off with 100 subscribers, and then 200 and 300. Now there's almost 1,200 subscribers, and over 600 people read the newsletter every week.
Wow. And is it a weekly newsletter then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tuesday, 7 a.m. sharp.
Wow. Fabulous.
For the past 233 weeks, I think, consecutively.
Wow. That's amazing. So what do you do when you go on vacation?
Haven't vacationed much for two reasons, COVID, but also my partner Terry's mother's 98, and that requires her to be home. And we haven't traveled much, but one time we went camping, and I just loaded the 2 updates before I went. I took the laptop and launched it halfway through, and so I got that week covered also.
Right. Yeah, I've done that routine where you drive the 14 miles to the place where there's reception, do your one little thing, click, 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 and then leave and go back, right? Bruce, how long has the community calendar been in operation?
Well, this version of the community calendar started in 2016, and at that point it came out of my work in organizing and political campaigns, and I was trying to figure out how to get the word about so many important election issues in the 2016 election, especially November. And it occurred to me I built some calendars before, written the software for them, and that were more for internal private uses by companies and campaigns and stuff. But this was the first time I took it out to the public like this, and it was it kind of took off right away as a useful thing. And so then I thought, wait a minute, this could be more useful if it wasn't just political campaigns. And so I reached out to different groups in the community that I know and some activists, and started signing up a whole variety of groups, mostly nonprofit groups, but a few for-profit things that are doing community-oriented stuff, and sort of built it up from there. And the idea, kind of similar to what Andy does with aggregating all the environmental groups in one place, is that my thought was that lots of groups, especially nonprofits, they have their own calendar. K-Squid has its own calendar. You have to go to its website to see it, though.
Right.
And my thought was, why not have a place where lots of groups post their activities, especially things to get involved with, all in one place, so that somebody could find several different things, maybe even find something that they hadn't initially been looking for, but happened to read a listing on the calendar and thought, I need to get involved in that. That's a cool thing. So, and it's kind of gone up and down. It's a volunteer project, and sometimes I don't have any time for it. But I'm actually really excited right now, because early this year I took almost 6 weeks to basically just focus on rewriting the code for it so that it can handle a lot more sort of expansion. And I've just begun implementing some of the expansion stuff to make it more useful and more handy. And I'm going through another round of reaching out to groups to get their activities listed again. And it kind of fell off there for a couple of years, but it's definitely resurging now. So I'm stoked, yeah.
Yeah, so do you have to go out and search for the events, or do you have groups actually submit them?
The way it works in most cases is that the groups join, and I give them access, and then when they have something, they log in and post their event. And so, which to me is like it's coming directly from the source, and the whole point of the community calendar is to be a channel to get people to those groups. And so to me, it's best if they write their material and post their stuff. And very soon I'm going to start adding the capability to have pictures and things like that too. It's been all kind of text-based up to now to keep it simpler. But and the other nice thing about it being posted by the groups that are doing things is there's no spam, there's no outrageous stuff, there's no interlopers. It's all genuine and it's all accountable. So that if something did happen to get posted that was somehow unacceptable or something, we know who posted it, and so we can deal with that or talk to them. So
right, yeah. There's no dodging accountability with false IDs or funny Instagram names or whatever.
Yeah, I mean the internet's been around now in our lives for a long time, and there's so much BS and fakery and stuff like that, and I just wanted to not be part of something that was going to promote that kind of activity.
Yeah, that's great. So I know I took a look at the most recent calendar page, and there's lots and lots of events going on, and at any given time, and obviously not every organization in the area or person involved in an action is posting yet. But it's neat because you do see a variety of stuff going on, and it really makes you realize how much people are contributing to what's actually happening. Like you say, what's new in town? Well, if it weren't for all these people and organizations doing what they do, there wouldn't be a lot to report, really.
Yeah.
And that's true too for the environmental organizations that you list, Andy. That there's so many different, campaigns going on, so many different educational opportunities and volunteer opportunities, that it's really neat to have it. I think it would be almost overwhelming if you had to go to 10 websites, or more like probably 30, really, to get comprehensive coverage, to see it all in one place. So how, for you, Bruce, what would you say is typical for a week? Like, how many events do you usually end up listed in a week or so?
Varies quite a bit, but I'd say there's usually 3 or 4 a day, although it definitely fluctuates.
Wow.
And weekends sometimes have more, sometimes less. And I'm actively trying to draw in more right now, because now that I've finished the big revisions, I'm reaching out to lots of groups and trying to get them back involved. In fact, I want to have K-Squid be able to post not the entire schedule, because that would take up the whole calendar, but like key shows and special events and stuff like that.
Right, because we have, as anybody who listens to the station knows, we have a number of shows like this one that are public affairs programming produced locally.
Yeah.
And so those might be more relevant for a local calendar, just to list those particular programs. So, yeah.
But a really exciting thing, and today is kind of the announcement, or the marker of it, is that Andy and I are now talking about collaborating between the Environmenteers newsletter and website and the community calendar. He's told me he has things that he'd love to post, but doesn't have room, or they're ongoing things, which is perfect for the calendar. If something's every Tuesday afternoon, that's perfect to have in the calendar, so that you can get what's happening this time,
Right.
Stuff like that. And so we're exploring the idea of not merging, but mutually complementing each other's work, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that was very compelling to me, as the update. I want it to be pretty concise or brief. So there's 3 educational learning items, might be a lecture or film, or just information from a state or national group, and then 3 action items, in person or email kind of campaigns, and 3 good news articles. I always have 6 or 10 or 15 other kinds of items that I'd like to post, but I have to pick and choose, and so to have a place to post those and further publicize these, especially ongoing volunteer opportunities, is just great. And Len, I wanted to say something you said about the when you were talking. I realized that in a way the Environteers and the update is one of the purposes is to honor all of these hundreds of individuals who are with these organizations, very dedicated. They're creating this educational material and opportunity to directly participate in protecting and restoring our environment. They're working hard every week, and here's all this work they're doing. And so, I mean, there's publicizing their event, but there's also, I guess, I hadn't really realized how compelling that is to honor them and their work.
That's a really good thought. Yeah. Because people are doing, I mean, maybe other communities are like this too, but I've been here over 50 years, and this place is just bubbling with activity and committed people who are just really swell. And so the more we can help promote and get people to them, either to attend something or to take part, to join or volunteer, I think that's the mission here.
Yeah, and it's, well, as Margaret Mead said, and I'm paraphrasing here, a small group of people working together can create really meaningful change, and indeed it's the only way it ever does happen. And it's so impressive to see, and even occasionally participate on my part in small groups collecting in the community and working on one particular thing, and then, a few months or a few years or a decade down the line, you actually see the results from that, depending on what it is. And it's, we're living in that. And I know a lot of people here in the community may not be aware of all the work that's going on by fellow citizens behind the scenes. And that's why I wanted to, give some voice to the work that you're doing, because I think it really enables all of us to participate more meaningfully if we know all these things are going on, and we can actually, in whatever small way we're able to contribute. If you're commuting over the hill for work and raising kids at home, it's like you got very little extra time.
Yeah.
But if you know something is happening and you can look in one place or, two places, the community calendar and Volunteers website, to find out about it, then you can do that really simple thing that one time where there's an opportunity to, sign a letter or petition or make one phone call or send one $10 contribution or whatever you can afford. Like, it can make a big difference, and you are then tied into something that's going on in the community that you support, that's moving things in the direction you want it to go.
Yeah.
And we don't, I think for a lot of us, we have no idea. There's no way of keeping track of all of it, even those of us who try.
Yeah.
And so, but it's still making a difference in the community. And so I think it's always great for people to be aware and to be able to advocate, for or against, or, contribute their knowledge to efforts that are going on.
Yeah.
So for that, Bruce, I wanted to ask you about the Santa Cruz Community Calendar. You mentioned that organizations now do their own, but if there's an organization that isn't doing that now, how would they get in touch with you in order to provide listings for the calendar?
The main way is if you go to the calendar, santacruzcommunitycalendar.org, there's an about link, and if you click that, then I made it a little bit obscure because somebody was hacking into the calendar a couple of years ago, and so I kind of had to clamp down on how you access it. But if you click a few links, you can find a list of the current members or recent members, and there's a join button, and that lets you put in information about your organization and what it's up to and how people can get involved, and the contact information of the person who I will be giving a password to, who can then post for that organization. And so that's the main way. There are a couple of us, one hero of our community, Pauline Seals, and I are also curators. And so there are times when something's happening, it's not a big group or it's an informal thing or just needs to get done quickly, then Pauline or I will post it directly. But mostly I want the groups to do it because it's really their thing. And by the way, I wanted to mention that this calendar did sort of grow out of political and civic and kind of issue-oriented stuff, but it also has art shows. I've set it up now so that somebody that's doing a class, an in-person or an online class, can list their class schedule and all the information needed for the class. That's one of the new things I've just added.
Great.
And so that what I'm trying to do is broaden it so it's not just sort of just the activist political realm, but just people celebrating and enjoying everything that happens in this community. A big question I haven't resolved is, what about things like the Catalyst, or the places that are commercial operations but are still cultural activities important to a lot of people? Should I get into commercial listings? I haven't really figured that one out yet. So for now, I'm sticking with kind of the nonprofits and the community-based groups.
And it still gives you a lot because, for example, the Midtown parties that were going on last year and the year before are free.
Yeah.
Put on by, I'm not actually sure who, but it's not a for-profit operation.
Yeah.
Same is true for the events that happen in Abbott Square,
right,
which are all free to the community. And that, if you have that, okay,
and there are
profit only.
Yeah, and there are a few people who do classes and they do ask for a fee because they're teaching something substantive. And I think of Beth Love, for example, who does food and agriculture-related subject matter, and she helps support herself partly by doing classes for people on how to cook in the most environmentally appropriate way. And that's a wonderful thing, but she does charge for it because there's materials and she's giving a lot of expertise, and that's fine. I'm definitely not against things you have to pay for, although the main thing is that, the main struggle is, do I take actual advertisements? And I don't want to so far, although being a typical Santa Cruz person who just finds some way to hustle just to stay here, I'm definitely trying to figure out, is there any way that this could help support me? But at the moment, it doesn't. Other than there is a donate button, which I'm very happy to accept donations for. But
Yeah, well, and it represents a lot of work, so I can see where the donations would play a role.
I counted up, and I rewrote about 14,000 lines of computer code to do this revision last month.
Wow.
That was something. It took a lot of concentration, but I get off on doing that, so it was fun too.
Okay, good. If you're just tuning in, my guests are Bruce Van Allen and Andy Carman. Bruce is the creator and manager of the Santa Cruz Community Calendar, an online calendar of events and activities, and Andy Carman is the creator and manager of the Environteers website, which has news and volunteer opportunities around environmental activities, both educational and advocacy work here in the area. So, the Environteers website lists learning activities, eco actions, and good news. I wonder if you could give us examples of each of those.
Okay, sure. So for the educational learning items, they're, just broad categories. There's talks, lectures, say that the Natural History Museum puts on. There's talks at the Seymour Center, at the Marine Sanctuary, Discovery Center, etc., and Watsonville Wetlands Watch and Elkhorn Slough. They'll have talks and films, and then, but also hikes. And the Friends of State Parks have guided hikes of Wilder and Henry Cowell, and so there's a real broad range of learning opportunities. And then the eco actions, as the page is called, it also is a broad range. There's often, as most people know, in-person volunteer opportunities. The most prolific group is probably Save Our Shores, has beach cleanups regularly. Coastal Watershed Council has river native plant restoration and cleanup, and then Watsonville Wetlands has their prolific propagators, where you can go there and help plant and propagate their native plants that they use then in restoration work that they're doing in Watsonville, and etc. So there's dozens, and there's actually 101 groups in this county, and that might be hard to believe, but actually they're all listed on the website. But that includes the nonprofits, the state parks, all of which have educational activities, and a lot less frequently, but sometimes there's volunteer opportunities. The agencies, the museums, and then the academics like environmental studies at UCSC. There's actually 101 different entities. And then to finish answering your question, the good news articles, I had tended to get those all off the internet. They're recent breakthroughs with legislation or discoveries of some new solar technology or something like that. But more recently, I've been finding really good local news, like this friend Miguel Aznar just sent me this article about 3 local high school students who were allowed to compete in the International Science Fair, and they went to Atlanta. I'm not sure where they went, but anyways, all 3 of them won awards, and they're all environmentally related. One was a simple solar water quality monitoring device that this high school student created, that where you could now monitor water quality ongoingly with little maintenance and things like that. So there's plenty of good news with maybe not so much legislation, but with the works that people are doing, local efforts.
We need that good news.
Yeah. I mean, because the news media tends to be very sensationalistic, and it's all about the latest calamity, crisis, or whatever, or controversy. But as we all know, you go through your daily life, and we're constantly being served by the people who maintain the streets and work in the stores and all the rest that makes our lives possible, and not to mention the very obvious service of people who work in education and healthcare and all of that, where we're we really depend on that work, but that isn't in the news, even though it's going on all the time.
Yeah. I just realized something when you were talking, that the more active, this is a kind of simple formula, there's probably exceptions, but the more active people are, the more you become, whether you believe or you're insistent on that participating matters, and there's something that can be done. I don't even mean hopeful. It's more like, oh no, really? Oh, that's horrible. We've got to do something about that. That kind of attitude, I think, comes along with being active. So when I see something horrendous, like when was the last time the CO2 level was at 425 parts per million? Well, that was, I can't remember how many million years ago. And how much deeper was the ocean then? 30 feet deeper. Well, oops, there goes all the Santa Cruz downtown. Right?
Yeah.
If the ocean rose 10 feet, downtown Santa Cruz is gone. So that's not going to happen tomorrow. But the point being, that's, if you haven't been active at all and you're just learning stuff and you hear that kind of news, it could easily be discouraging.
Yeah,
that's right. Could be
discouraging. But the more active you are, the more, I think, I don't know, I haven't done a study on this, but I think the more, it's almost resilient you are. Like, oh, okay, well, we need to, really get more active, or I need to publicize that so people know, because then when they do, they'll be wanting to do something about it. That being said, I put the 3 good news articles in at the end of the update, as some of the earlier articles are daunting.
Facing the problems,
right?
Yeah.
If you read environmental news and what the latest IPCC study, it's daunting. It's an understatement. And so, I think people need to, like, it's not just, oh, good news, I'm hopeful now. It's like, oh, people are doing something. They've tackled this. They've addressed this. They've passed this legislation that will help. Does it clear everything up? No, but it will clear up 1,000th of it, and yay, progress.
Do that 1,000 times, and you're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just heard a report on the radio this morning about finding that high school students who participate in volunteer activities have a better sense of self-confidence, self-esteem, and then the reporter talking about this study said there had been previous studies that also show that youth who participate in volunteer activities have lower incidence of depression. So these are and I think it applies to all of us. I am not a teenager, and I definitely find by being together with other people working on an issue of concern, it makes me feel like things are moving in a direction, like something's actually happening and there's a reason to be involved. whereas if I was just stewing by myself at home, I'm not sure I could maintain that motivation.
Working with other people is definitely a really important thing. And I even include in that, for personal health and kind of well-being, is that connecting with other people over shared concerns is a really compelling, really important, and I think deep kind of way to be in the world. And I agree with Andy. It expands your horizons, and you're more resilient. You're more ready to take something on if you've had the experience of working with others and having something constructive happen.
Yeah, and it can be small. I mean, it doesn't have to be 20 hours a week. It can be 2 hours a month, and it still and brings something to your life.
I want to touch something that you were mentioning a few minutes ago, of all the people that are just doing stuff day to day that keep the community going. And some of that is work, paid work, and so on. Some of it is the community groups and the cultural groups and more volunteer type stuff. And when I think of, if you think of the bad environmental news or the climate change news, so much of where it's being grappled with is at high levels of government or international meetings or things like that, and that can be very discouraging for a person who isn't already in some whoop-de-whoop position. To how do I make a difference in all that? But what I find and what I know is true from all the groups in environmenteers is that that people are not waiting for business or government or big institutions to deal with stuff, to work on these huge things like racism and climate change and things like that. People are actually doing it day to day in their communities with their friends or with their other co-volunteers, and like I say, not waiting for the bigger picture to get somewhere. And people are, in my view, pretty fed up and pretty impatient right now for the big institutions, but there are still many, many people who are not turning that into cynicism or discouragement or apathy, but rather saying, okay, let's take it on, let's do it ourselves. Let's get together with some other people and try to fix this bad thing or prevent some new bad thing from happening. And that's what really touches me in this community, is so many people, so many groups are just doing that, just making a difference right now in your little plot of land, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
And I want to say another term we could use here is agency, and for the individual, that's me considering, well, this issue, this matters to me, like seeing all this debris on Seabright Beach after the river flows, and this matters to me, but also I can make a difference. Maybe more important, we can make a difference. It's I sometimes forget that it's almost better to emphasize the team, like join a team.
Right.
You could take it on, but even like in volunteers, I create the update myself, but I have a whole team, the web developer and who fixes the website, and the David Chairman coaches me every other week, and I get different kinds of support from different people. It's anyway, just
your connections.
You don't take anything on by yourself. Join a team or form a team, so it's much more effective, of course.
Yeah, I've heard the expression, this is a we, not me world. And if you want to get anything done, it's got to be with other people.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like.
I want to pick one, just give you one brief example of something, though, just for people to consider. I hadn't heard about wetsuit recycling. I didn't know anything about that. Every surfer, I bet, in the county has at least one wetsuit sitting in their closet that's they don't use anymore. It's too leaky, but they just can't quite. Fortunately, they didn't throw it in the trash, and maybe fortunately they didn't give it to Goodwill because it might end up in the trash there. So someone said they're starting wetsuit recycling at Buell, and so I said, okay, well, I'll take that on. Made a little bin. We didn't get that many wetsuits, but over the Memorial Day weekend. But I just did a little bit of research. It was about half an hour, and it turns out Rip Curl has a company-wide recycling program. You can bring in any wetsuit,
Not just their brands.
Not just Rip Curl, and as long as they like it dry, and they will ship it to this company that shreds them and makes playground, those mats, cushion mats for playgrounds. And then there's blown out wetsuits on Portola. They'll take them, and if they're in pretty good shape, they'll give them to kids in need. And there's also some ones that give it to lower income communities that I can't remember those. And then there's, if nothing else, there's Play It Against Sports, and they'll buy your dang wetsuit for $10 or $20 or $30, and then they'll resell it. But it's good. It's keeping it in use. It's better than recycling because it's not being shredded and broken down.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I had one I outgrew, and I took it to Play It Against Sports. This is decades ago now, and same thing.
Yeah. So and the
somebody
point
else got it.
The point of that is, if you do want to get started and the things you see aren't that compelling, just pick something that interests you and do a little research, and so now I'm going to write an article in the update about these resources, and I guarantee you 80-90% of surfers, for example, body surfers, boogie boarders, don't know about these places where they can recycle wetsuits, and it's just so simple and it's so fun. And when I stopped by Play It Against Sports today and said, "Hey, would you want me to promote this?" They go, "Free advertising." Yeah. Is there a downside? Like what?
Right. Yeah. Well, we're going to take a really short break. We'll be back with Andy Carman and Bruce Van Allen right after this. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to Talk of the Bay. I'm Len B.A., and I'm here with Andy Carman and Bruce Van Allen. Andy is the founder and manager of the Environteers website, which provides connection to volunteer activities in environmental in environmental causes and learning activities and good news and a weekly newsletter. And Bruce Van Allen is the creator and curator of the Santa Cruz Community Calendar, which lists a lot of activities that are being put on by our fellow citizens in the community. And I wanted to come back to you, Bruce, and ask you about, you said you'd put in, I think you said 14,000 lines of code in revising, or was it 140,000? Anyway, a lot in revising the website recently. And what's different, and what are the new features that you can offer?
Well, internally, I won't go into all the code stuff, but basically, I wrote the original code for that almost 15 years ago, and it was for political campaigns and stuff like that. And when I launched this calendar, the community calendar, in 2016, it was all just reusing some of that old code. But over the years since then, I've found that I wanted to add some features to make it a better promotional tool for all the groups that post their events. But that old code was kind of holding me back. It had a pretty ancient way of storing data about the activities and stuff like that. So that's what I had to rewrite. And now that I've done that, I'm kind of moving into a new phase of adding some of those features I've been thinking about for years. I'll give a couple examples. One of them is that very soon I'm going to allow the groups posting their events, and it's, by the way, free, if I didn't mention that before. They just have to join, that they will be able to put up pictures, photos, or illustrations or something if it is relevant to their type of event. That's a challenging thing with online stuff because somebody might have a picture of a tree that they want to show about or something like that, and it's 6 megabytes, which is huge when it comes to putting it on a web page. And you could take that same picture and reduce the image file to maybe 60 kilobytes, which is, a lot less than that, and shows up immediately on a web page, as opposed to waiting for it to slowly load. And so if I'm going to allow groups to post pictures, then I have to add some code that will process the pictures into a standard size and reduce their memory burden on the system. And so I have to write that code, but I'm getting very close. And the revisions that I did last month allow me to do that. So that's one thing. It's pretty soon it's going to be...
So they can just upload whatever picture they have and it'll automatically adjust it.
My system will adjust it,
great.
yeah. So they don't have to mess with the graphics and stuff themselves. So then the second thing is, I realized that there are things going on that are like news that people want to hear about, but they're not necessarily a particular event on a particular date on the calendar, but it's sort of more like an announcement. And sometimes also you post an event and you want to get save the date, so it's going to be in August, so we don't have all the detail yet, but this is going to be really important to show up. So that's not very informative on the calendar, but I've added an announcements column on the homepage of the calendar for things that aren't necessarily on a particular date in the calendar. So this week there's a bunch of notices about some city and county hearings about updating their general plan and their housing plans and stuff like that. And so that's kind of a fun thing that I've added. And then another thing that's going to be really important to mention for groups to promote their events is that I'm adding a promotional section so that when you post an event for your group, you can already have provided in your group's own little homepage on the calendar your Facebook link or the link to your email list or to another email list or other places where you would want to have your promotion activity radiate out to. And so fairly soon, if you post your event in the calendar, you will get buttons you can click and it will automatically package up your event and put it on your Facebook page for you or post it to WhatsApp or whatever, whatever, and I'm not going to be comprehensive with all the social media. I don't think we'll go into TikTok at this point, but
you never know if it'll be here next week.
Yeah, or what'll replace it. But the code that I'm writing is really flexible with that. So I'll be able to go with the times, whatever it is, and so I'm excited about it. That's going to be one of the first next things that I add is that really because again, my whole point is someone comes to the calendar, finds something interesting. I want them to connect as directly as possible to that group that's doing that thing, so they can get involved or make a donation or whatever it is. And so the more the calendar can be a way that those groups can get their word out in as many channels as possible, that's my goal.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things I'm working on over the next few weeks. And
right. So that's relatively soon that's available. It sounds like great. Yeah. And that's at SantaCruzCommunityCalendar.org, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And Andy, you already have photos, but it looks like you're the one posting those in this case. It's not posted by the organizations listed, is it?
Yes, I've always done all the posting. I want it to be a real consistent kind of format and length and the images. Sometimes the images that I find with an organization's posting of a beach cleanup or whatever, the photos can be pretty modest. And so if they are, then I go searching for photo images online, ones that for nonprofits images, so they're not going to be upset if I use them. Anyways, and there was the other topic of with photos, it's so compelling to have that. Obviously, it tells a bit of a story, but it both gets your attention, but it also makes it easier to remember and retain. And so I've always tried to get really beautiful photos or for the lead image, the top image in the update, I've gone to open studios and solicited the local artists, landscape painters and photographers, and there's I think it's 18 or 20 local artists that have been kind enough to loan their work for the update, and just some of the wonderful landscape artists, Andy Carman and Ed Penniman and Hausman and They all ended at MANN. It's kind of interesting. But, anyway, and then and I was honored to get Franz Lontin's permission to use some of his photos from the Life of Life Bay of Life book that he and his wife Chris produced recently.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Andy, you do a beautiful job with that update. And if listeners don't get the update, they should find it and sign up and get it, because it's a pleasure to see it every week.
Thank you.
You do a really nice job.
And where do you sign up?
They go to environtears.org. That's environtears, TEERS.org. And if you just put in Environtears, that it will come up. There's nothing else really like it. And then on the main page, there's a way to quickly subscribe. And I want to emphasize, and I think you said this, but you would if you hadn't. We don't share emails with anyone ever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's also not 6 emails a week. There's the 1 email newsletter, and that's it. I might break down and send an extra one a year for donations, but so far I haven't. Uh-huh. And there's also no advertising, like you said, on the site.
If you're listening to this radio station, that's probably one of the reasons you're listening, is because we have no advertising. Yeah. And one of the great things about the photos, well, particularly when it comes to environmental causes and issues, is, you can often show an image that, evokes something emotionally. Either it's, the beauty itself, which, brings out something reflects for us in that, or it's the beauty endangered, which also draws out, an emotional response. If we're human, we're going to react to that. And it reminds me, I was in a online meeting with Pachamama Alliance, which is it's an international organization, but they're headquartered in San Francisco. And one of the people there said, instead of thinking of ourselves as activists, we're beginning to think of ourselves as proactivists. That what we really need to do is not so much concentrate on the things that that are harmful that we're trying to stop, but on our vision of a future where things work. And I really appreciated that. And there's something in the the photographs of something beautiful that is really that, essentially saying, hey, here's something we care about that is alive. And you can go from there, well, if it's in danger, okay, then you have to start thinking about, what do you do?
Pictures can really just give you a story right there in one quick glance. It really can be very compelling. One of the things that Andy and I both have been thinking about is, from doing this work, is how people get motivated or get involved or get connected, and what is it about the calendar or the Environmenteers newsletter that succeeds with that or not. And we're I think we're both learning still about what and all the groups are learning. How do you put an appeal out for volunteers that actually gets people to show up with positive energy? That it's a really interesting thing, and there's so many calls on us now for so many things, and just surviving and working and taking care of our kids and families and stuff. What is it that gets someone to join?
Yeah, and part of that, of course, is people's expectations regarding whether their efforts, participation will make a difference. And I just was looking today at a study and a few articles about sending emails to representatives, and there's no definitive saying that absolutely every email counts. But what I saw is that for example, emails to representatives about some issue where you're promoting some legislation, say, that the congressional staff get these emails, and there could be thousands of them coming in, and first they have kind of a threshold where if there's more than, say, 50 or 500 about this issue, then the staff person will compile like the numbers and then put together I'm forgetting the term, but it's some kind of package for their employer, the legislator, outlining what the incoming sentiment is. So of course they not every single one and every little comment you put in your email it gets read by the representative, but the numbers do matter, and even then you could think, yeah, but thousands. I mean, well, when you vote in California for a statewide office, how many million is that? And so you need 12.5 million for this person to win, or 1.2 million, but you still vote because cumulatively we matter. But here's something where there's only going to be 800 votes,
right,
and 500 for and 300 again, and so it's a great way to vote. I'd say every day, but regularly at least.
Yeah, and a lot of organizations make it easy because they have prepared emails that you can just put in your name and email address and maybe your zip code and say submit, and they'll send it for you, which is a nice tool if you're really strapped for time. And I don't know, I've heard, and I don't know if this is factual or rumor, but I've heard that having an individualized message counts, and I don't know how they would know that. You could change the subject line a little, or add an extra sentence, but how do they know it's different? I don't know.
You mean the recipient? How do they know it's different?
How do they know?
Well, if they get 1,000 of them, then they'll see the one where someone added their own first paragraph or something. Because a lot of those systems that you mentioned will let the person who's doing it customize the message a little bit, and put their name on it or whatever. It's interesting that I've operated a big system like that for a couple of years for the Romero Institute, which is based here in Santa Cruz, but it's actually national and international, working on indigenous rights and climate change issues. And I was doing technical work for them for a couple of years, sending out about 100,000 emails a week to get the word out, and also to do fundraising pitches and stuff like that. And so I used a big system that let me compose, or our boss compose the message. I'd find a photo for it. I'd put it all together, and then this big system, it's called Every Action, could then send it to our subscriber list and monitor how many people opened it, and so we're kind of using the tools that the commercial folks use, but with a more benign approach to it.
Yeah. Now you've both been operating these websites for 7 years in your case, and how many years is it?
Just about the same. This was 2016, so
yeah, about 7 years. And you get a lot of listings, and I wondered if you noticed much of a change, like with the pandemic or with the CZU fires, or was there an increase, decrease? Was there different level of response because of the changes that we've seen, or during the Trump administration, after the Trump, just all the different things that have been going on over the last 5 or so years? Have you noticed cycles or trends in how your listings come and go?
With the community calendar, I'm not sure I have, but there was also a period there, and the pandemic was definitely affecting me on this, when because as I mentioned at the beginning, my old code that I wrote like 15 years ago was really holding back improvements, and I got frustrated because I just I couldn't afford to put the time in to do that update, and I finally just did it, and now I'm broke. But so for a couple of years there, I did not promote the calendar, did not work on it much. I made sure it kept operating, and a few people kept submitting, but it kind of it languished during those periods. So I'm really actively working to revive it now. So I don't have a good handle on the trends of those few years.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is your chance, listeners. If you've been wanting to get something in a consolidated single community calendar, SantaCruzCommunityCalendar.org.
Yeah, and if your group wants to join to publicize and promote your events, this is the place to do it.
Yeah, and it's free.
Yeah, and it's free.
Great. Yeah. How about you, Andy? Did you notice any changes?
There was a huge impact from COVID on volunteer activities, as there was zero. And it's interesting because that was the time when I broadened, let's say, the eco actions category to include more state and national and actually international campaigns, because that's all there was. It was email campaigns for quite some time. It's been so nice when it started opening up again, and one organization after another started having in-person volunteer opportunities.
Oh, yeah. Well, amazingly, we're out of time. I wanted to thank you both for being on the show. It's been great to have you here. Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Len.
Thank you,
Your show's
Len,
great.
and
Really
Bruce,
appreciate your work. Yeah, Andy.
Delightful.
Yeah,
And-
I'm really glad to hear you're collaborating.
Yeah, everybody, stay tuned. We're gonna create something out of the two different things that'll emerge. Don't even know exactly what it'll be yet, but it's gonna be good and it's gonna be fun.
Environteers.org and SantaCruzCommunityCalendar.org. And look for this. If you're trying to remember about it, it'll be a podcast within a week or so. Thanks, everybody.